Tired of big tech clashing with your Catholic values? Fide Chat is now live on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store. It's private, encrypted, and built by Catholics for Catholics, with features like parental controls and more. Connect securely with family, friends, and groups. Download Fide Chat at fide.email. Technology without compromise. There have been some interesting stories in the news this past week that I covered here. Past 2 weeks, really. The cancellation of 3 professors from the seminary, the diocesan seminary in Detroit. That caused an international firestorm. Combine that with the news of the Archbishop in New Mexico having a roommate who was been out of the priesthood for 28 years and been living a James Martin kind of life, and then re-entered the priesthood and was given a parish and some rather choice assignments in the diocese by that bishop. It's clear that the infiltration of the church, the subversion of the faith, continues apace, that it is not stopping, no matter what some people might want you to believe. And Vigano is responding to this, and then I'm going to give you an answer to the question of, will the Pope act? And I'm going to show you how some of the reporting on that is going from very mainstream sources. So we go here to X, to Vigano's official account. He released a really short statement here, but it's packs a punch. And yes, I know for a fact that this is his official statement. He says, quote, decades of deliberate infiltration by corrupt and compromised elements with the vile complicity of the Catholic Church's leadership have transformed its hierarchy into a lobby of perverted heretics, concerned only with indulging their base vices and surrounding themselves with like-minded individuals. But beyond the scandal of the rise of unworthy and corrupt figures, we must not forget the criminal purge of those doctrinally and morally sound elements, priests and bishops, including myself, whose mere presence exposed this devastating takeover of the church. Their cynical and ruthless persecution cries out for justice before God. If an entire political class keeps Big Jeff's list well hidden to prevent the worldwide subversive system from collapsing under the weight of an immense scandal, an entire class of prelates keeps secret the dossiers on the Lavender Group that has been devastating the Catholic Church for decades, so as to not discredit the conciliar and synodal church. When the Son of Man comes, will he still find faith on earth? And he posts this in reference to both, you get an oblique reference here to the purge of those from the hierarchy that are of the more orthodox elements, but he's also posting this in response to what I was suggesting here. I reported on this a few days ago at the original Lepanto post. We'll go over it. Breaking. Archbishop Wester restored the priestly faculties of a man who spent 28 years away from the priesthood, 10 of which he spent in a court-registered James Martin-type pairing. Archbishop Wester also made him the pastor of a parish, a dean, and placed him on the marriage tribunal as a judge and defender of the bond. And he also made him his roommate, which is just astonishing and kind of gives the game away, or at least it could. And those are the things that Vigano is responding to, as well as to a whole host of other things. I'll go over in a few days some news here out of Brazil, but there's a new bishop appointed. Not a big deal. New bishops get appointed all the time. But this one is cut from the same cloth as James Martin and Cardinal Tobin and, those kinds of bishops and priests. And he's fully on board with the UN's end-of-decade plan for sustainable development and all the rest of this secular nonsense. And so this kind of gets to a point here. People are wondering if the new pope is going to act against a lot of the holdovers of Bergoglianism, and I don't think he's going to. He was appointed at the very least to not rock the boat. He has said himself, including on the day he emerged on the loggia for the first time as the pope, praising synodality and the synodal revolution in the church and pledging to keep it moving forward. And he has said it in no uncertain terms. So please have respect enough for the man to believe him when he tells you these things. Now, a lot of people will say, well, we don't know what he means by that. But after 3 months, we should have an idea. And American Magazine really kind of nails it with this. I'm not a fan of American Magazine, but you have to remember, they will not generally mask what they're saying. They will not hide it. They will be right up front in a very measured, but still pretty blunt kind of way. The headline, "The Vatican is out of cash. Will Pope Leo's high approval rating help get donations?" Now, I reported to you a couple days ago that the Vatican no longer wants your money. And they clearly don't, because they spent 100 million euros on a financially unsustainable project, a solar farm in Italy. Solar is a very expensive source of energy. The Vatican is broke. Dumping 100 million euros into a project like that is the height of irresponsibility, when that money could be used to fortify the actual financial system of the Vatican. But there are ways they could fix the problem overnight. I'll go over those here in a second. Well, let's go to this American Magazine article so we can get an idea of the situation of the financial health of the Vatican and what they're expecting. Now it goes here first, quote, "Gallup's first poll surveying Americans' opinions on Pope Leo XIV was released August 5th, showing that Leo is the most favorably viewed out of a group of 14 newsmakers that included the leader of one of the countries in that war in Eastern Europe and Elon Musk. He's the only one to be viewed more favorably than unfavorably by both Republicans and Democrats. 57% of U.S. adults view the new pope favorably, and his net favorability leads the runner-up, Big Z-Man himself, by a whopping 28 points. Among Catholic adults in the U.S., the pope's approval rating is, as expected, much higher, with 76% viewing him favorably. That favorability rating, however, breaks with the trend of previous Gallup polls on U.S. Catholic opinions of the pope. Both Pope Benedict XVI and Francis were seen more favorably at their elections than their predecessors had been at the end of their papacies. Pope Leo's 76% favorability rating among U.S. Catholic adults does not quite meet Pope Francis's 77% favorability rating from late 2023. And I know that's only 2 points, right? 1 point to be tied, but the precedent is 2 points is to have a higher approval rating at your election than your predecessor did at his election. But that is still kind of a big deal. And I kind of wonder why that is, because Leo's an American, right? So you would think he'd be getting a huge bump from it. And I do wonder if he is getting a big bump in that approval rating based on being an American. Something to think about. And it goes on to when they did all this stuff. That's not the important part here. From the article, quote, "Past papal elections and the subsequent honeymoon period of the new pope have, in general, brought increases in donations to Peter's Pence, an annual Vatican donation drive where Catholics are urged to give money for the Pope's charitable works. Since the 1990s, there have been controversies over the use of Peter's Pence funds to finance other Holy See works besides the direct charitable aid. A significant portion of the funds collected through Peter's Pence, over 25% in 2024, according to Vatican News, come from the United States. At the end of the popular papacy of John the 23rd, Peter's Pence brought in around $15 million a year worldwide. The less popular Paul VI saw declines in Peter's Pence every year of his papacy, with the collection only bringing in around $4 million per year at the time of his death in 1978. Neither Peter's Pence nor U.S. opinion poll statistics were available to measure support for John Paul II's election following 1978's chaotic year of 3 popes. When Paul VI died, John Paul I was elected and died 33 days later, and finally John Paul II was elected. However, according to Pastor Tommy Reese, F.J., his 1998 book, Inside the Vatican, the collections from Peter's Pence generally rose steadily throughout the 80s and early 90s. However, with the new papacy came a boon to donations, they say, after describing the collapse under Francis. 2005, the year of Benedict's election, saw an almost 15% increase in Peter's Pence revenue, up $59 million. And it goes on like that. Garnering donations will be just one of the many financial concerns facing Leo. At the cardinals' meeting before the conclave that elected him, printed financial reports were distributed to every cardinal and financial issues were discussed at length. Persistent deficit spending, financial mismanagement, and allegations of fraud continue to bedevil the Vatican. It was clear that continuing Pope Francis's financial reforms would be a key part of the new pope's mandate. The question at hand is, will he restore financial sanity? I got an easy way for you to get more donations from Catholics. Very, very, very easy way. Not only do you teach the faith, and yes, restore to some degree the traditional Mass, although I tend to be skeptical that that's going to happen anytime soon. What you have to do is silence certain kinds of Catholics. Usually, and I'm strictly saying here, people in the episcopate, priests or bishops or cardinals, someone in the actual hierarchy. Zero in on the episcopate, though, where the bishops and priests are, and maybe adjacent to troublesome leaders of religious houses. Go to Gloria TV for the perfect example of someone who should be silenced by direct intervention of the Pope himself. Headline: Former Abbot of Einsiedeln. I think Leo XIV is capable of appointing women as cardinals. You remember, ladies and gentlemen, when I've told you, unless you're really new here watching, if you are, please hit the like button and subscribe. It does help. But if you're new, I have said this before many times. The push for ordained deaconesses, will not stop at deaconesses. It will open the door to ordination to the priesthood, and from there consecration to the episcopate. They want lady bishops. And once you have a lady bishop, you'll get a lady archbishop. And when you get a lady archbishop, what are you going to get next? You get a lady cardinal. And then what happens? Will they finally stop there? Of course not. They want the whole kit and caboodle. The advocates for women's ordination want a popess, which if you think about that word, what a lady pope would be, a lady father, that doesn't work. Ontologically impossible. But that is what they want. And so this cardinal is kind of giving it away, or this abbot is kind of giving it away. Go to the article. Quote: Former Abbot Martin Werlin of the Benedictine Monastery of Einsiedeln, Switzerland, would like to see women appointed as cardinals. He made a statement on Wednesday during a panel discussion at Salzburg University Weeks, as reported by katholisch.de. Katholisch.de is the German bishop's website. This is them endorsing his statement. The time for a female cardinal is ripe and should not be delayed any further, he believes. He hopes, for instance, that Pope Leo XIV will elevate Sister Simona Brambilla, prefect for the Congregation of the Religious, to the rank of a cardinal. The former abbot suggests that this was Pope Francis's plan, as he appointed Brambilla as the first woman to head a Vatican congregation. I believe Pope Leo is capable of doing the same, he added. If the Pope wants to restore some trust in the leadership in the church, the first thing you should do is put an interdict on that former abbot. Silence him. Get him to retract those statements. That would take care of a lot of worries right there, because one, it would put the kibosh on women's ordination, or at least give him the opportunity to. And two, it would show everybody that he's not going to tolerate heretics in the hierarchy. It's not going to happen, probably. Another way he could restore a little bit of trust is with this one. Catholic Conclave, headline: Bavarian group raised the James Martin flag at World Youth Day. We experienced a great deal of support and openness. Now, I have said negative things about World Youth Day in the past, and I think I've gotten the most hate comments in response to that. I don't see a point to World Youth Day. The last World Youth events, this more recent Jubilee one is the one they're referring to here, than last year's World Youth Day, have seen grotesque abuses of power and of the sacraments. Last summer, during World Youth Day, they carried our Lord, pre-consecrated hosts, in crates into the event and just left them in a tent somewhere, treating the sacrament with profound disrespect. They've shown that they don't care, that they don't have respect for the sacrament. And so why would they have respect for the church's teaching here? This is the youth, by the way. The youngest generation in the church, the ones on the verge of adulthood. The ones that many of us put our hope in for being the generation that will restore sanity in the broader culture and in the church. And we put our hope in them because when you go to a traditional mass or to a very conservative, quote unquote, unicorn Novus Ordo mass, where the mass in the new rite is celebrated as if the priest believes that Jesus is truly present in the sacrament, and he actually believes that he is representing the sacrifice at Calvary from the altar. When he behaves that way and he does everything he can to encourage the laity to act the way they should at mass, we see young people attending those masses at much higher rates than anywhere else. So we put our hope in them for being the generation that will restore sanity to the church. There's also that other group. We all try to ignore them. But here's the reporting from Catholic Conclave. Quote, over a million young people from all over the world celebrated Mass with the Pope on Sunday in an open space on the outskirts of Rome. Many brought flags with them. A German group raised a special flag. That flag, right there. Many applauded for this. A group from Bavaria, one of the most conservative parts of Germany, and correct me if I'm wrong on that in the comments, but last I checked, they're one of the more conservative parts of Germany, caused a sensation at World Youth Day in Rome. They brought that flag that James Martin likes so much, which they raised at the event as part of the Catholic Church's Holy Year. We've received a lot of positive feedback, Pauline Erdmann, chairwoman of the Federation of German Catholic Youth, in the Archdiocese of Munich and Freising, reported to the Catholic News Agency. Young people from many countries who passed by applauded and thanked us for displaying the flag. Many wanted to have their photo taken with it. They hadn't noticed any other such flag on the 96-hectare Tor Vergata site on the outskirts of Rhodes, said Jacob Stadler, spokesperson for the Strange Working Group at the BDKJ Munich Freising. We haven't experienced anything negative here, but rather a great deal of support and openness. A night of prayer in the closing Mass with the Pope took place on the large outdoor grounds over the weekend, attended by more than 1 million young people from around 150 countries. They also carried the light blue altar boys flag. The other flag we're talking about read, "Love is no sin." We'll this issue high because strange people also have their place in the Catholic Church, Statler emphasized. The blessings of James Martin pairings and the recognition that of all genders are essential. In the Archdiocese of Munich Freising, there is a great deal of openness on the topic on both sides. Our priests are aware of this. It is a dialogue we want to remain in because there is not just black and white, Stadler said. End quote. And if the Pope wants to restore some faith in the way the church is being run, you silence that group as well. You issue an unequivocal condemnation of what they did. Now, with 1 million people there, security probably couldn't do much about it, but then putting that flag up. I'm not going to be, angry that that flag was not just ripped down by Vatican security at the event. Again, 1 million people present is hard to control. I understand that. But these groups have the freedom to speak in the church, to assume publicly that the Pope is going to give them what they want. And yet you had to bring this back to the beginning. 3 men at a Catholic seminary in Detroit canceled, fired within a few days of each other for teaching Catholic morality, for opposing fiducia supplicans and amoris laetitia. And they've appealed to Rome from last I heard, and I don't expect much to happen for them. These bishops, when they act in this way, act with impunity. They think they can get away with it. It's as if they know they've got a friend in Rome who will protect them. And I hope they're wrong about that. But their behavior shows that that's what they believe. And I hope that they are very wrong about that. So pray that the Pope takes some over-the-top direct action on bishops like Wester in New Mexico and Weissenberger in Detroit. But I'm curious what you think about this. So let me know in the comments. You think Vigano's statement at the beginning was too much? I can see some people thinking that. I don't find it particularly compelling of an argument that he was excommunicated and should not be listened to. He was excommunicated by heretics who have no rights in the church. So I don't think it was a valid excommunication. But as a general rule, do you think he was right? Or do you think he was a little over the top? And I ask that question because Vigano has a history of saying a lot of wonderful things, but then when he touches on secular politics, for some people, not myself, but for some people, he goes too far, getting into like conspiracies and such. So let me know what you think of this in the comments, please. Hit like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. Pray for everybody we spoke about today. The Pope first and foremost, but for Weissenberger and Wester and the rest of them, they need your prayers. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.